All right, boys and girls, so this is the notebook page that hopefully you have printed and you have ready today to take some notes on these two sources of energy, using water energy and air energy. So if you have not already printed this, take a moment. You're going to cut right along this large outer edge, and then you're going to cut just right here in the middle to form these two sections. So if you do not have this page already printed and ready and in your notebook, then pause the video and come back as soon as you are ready to get started. All right, so you should have read those pages in your textbook. Pages 356 through 359 talked about water and air, also known as wind energy. And then pages 360 to 361 just reminded us the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. So I know that we've talked about that earlier in the year, but we're going to dive in now and talk about these two examples of renewable resources. So water is actually referred to in the text as hydroelectric. And again, this one, air, in the text is referred to as wind energy. So I'm just going to jot down those two things just to remind myself. And up here at the top, somewhere right along the top, we need to remind ourselves that these are both examples of renewable resources. Meaning, we're not going to run out of wind. We're not going to run out of water. So in parentheses, you might want to put not going to run out. Whoops. Out. Not going to run out. Sorry about that. So first, let's talk about wind or air energy. So this is actually an example of a wind turbine. Some of you have probably seen a windmill before. The windmill kind of looks slightly different, right? It's got like the middle and it's got like several pieces. So we've seen both. I know that in third grade, you guys had a really good story in your reading textbook that talked about the difference and how wind turbines and windmills are used. I think it was a text that kind of compared and contrasts. Not sure if you guys read that last year, but just another example for you to refer back to if you remember reading it. So when we're talking about air or wind energy, we know that it's produced by moving air. So let's write that down. Produced by moving air. Well, that makes sense. It's the wind. We know that this first example here on the picture is a wind turbine, and in the text we learned that wind turbines change kinetic energy, so that movement, kinetic energy, to electrical energy. Give you guys just a moment to get caught up. Okay, so far we know that we have moving air that comes along. It then propels or turns these wind turbines, and it's that movement of the kinetic energy that then changes to electrical energy. And then just something else, a little bit more about how this happens. So wind rotates. So just a further explanation here. Wind rotates the turbine blade, so the part that you see pictured, and a generator changes this energy to electrical energy. So it's really the same thing that we said here, just kind of a more of an explanation of how that's happening. Again, guys, you can pause this video if you need to, but we're going to continue moving on. And now we're going to talk about water as a source of energy. So we know that in the text, you probably read a lot about how a dam operates and how it functions and how we use that to produce energy. I believe that they gave this really in-depth sequence of events right here of how that happens. So the author right here is using that text structure of sequence to tell you the order. Now we're going to go through and kind of summarize that in our own words. So again, talking about water energy, also known as hydroelectric. And let's just jot a few things down here. So we're still using the energy of movement, so the kinetic energy of the water this time, instead of wind or air. The kinetic energy of the falling water in a dam spins the blades of giant turbines. So this time maybe you're in a location where you're not producing as much wind, so now we're relying on another source, water. It's still doing the same thing, it's just now the water is flowing out of that dam, and as it falls, the kinetic energy is then spinning the blades of these turbines. As the turbines spin, a generator produces electricity. And the last thing to note here is that really this is nothing new. People have been doing this for years and years. People rely on the movement of a moving river. So the water energy to then transport people, maybe like a large ferry boat that would just float along, and maybe it's carrying people, maybe it's carrying goods or objects. So just important to note here that people have used water's energy to move people and things for many years. So again, guys, keep in mind that previously in the year, we've learned the difference between renewable and non-renewable. The last 2 pages in the text do go on to remind us that renewable resources such as wind or water, that are not going to run out, really need to be considered as we move forward into the future. Non-renewable, on the other hand, resources that cannot be renewed, like fossil fuels, once they're gone, they're gone. So we're having to look for other sources of energy to produce electricity. And they gave us these two examples of wind and water. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Great job today.